Welcome to the show, everybody. Joseph Robert, the fantasy football counselor. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what this episode's about. I'm wearing a Bears hat. The Chicago Bears and David Montgomery's Fantasy Football Value 2020. I've got a special guest here, Faiz, on the show. I'm going to introduce you to him. He is a Bears analyst. He's got a sports YouTube channel. The link is there below. But he's actually a Bears fan and an analyst. He knows them pretty much inside out. So I've got him on the show. Welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I'm everything all about the Bears. Anything about the Bears, I'm the guy for you, man. So I'm happy to be on and talk some Bears football.
I appreciate it. So today we're focusing on David Montgomery's fantasy value. So all you guys on YouTube, I know I look ridiculous here because I never wear my hat facing forward. It's always backwards. So I'm going to go ahead and switch that around here. It looks a little bit better backwards, but I had a Bears hat here on the wall. I had to wear it for this episode. So it's kind of a weird bubbly hat. But anyway, let's talk about David Montgomery because I'm a big fan of him as a person. I was high on him last year. I started seeing him come off fantasy football drafts as early as the second round because people saw some preseason action. We saw some upside. And then when the season started, I was very disappointed. So were a lot of fantasy fans. Mind you, he was part of a three-headed monster. Mind you, I had him with Derrick Henry in a bunch of drafts. A couple times paired him up with Zeke. I know I had David Johnson. He kind of busted on me. But he's really pretty much paired up with Derrick Henry's and the Zekes of the world in my three-headed monster scheme there. I also had Josh Jacobs in there. So my master plan is at the beginning of the draft is to go three-headed monster. And David Montgomery was a part of a lot of my teams last year. He really screwed me, man. I'm not going to lie. David Montgomery, 889 yards, 242 attempts. But I kept seeing Tariq Cohen. They love Tariq Cohen. I don't understand this fascination and this obsession with Tariq Cohen. The guy sucks. I don't care what anybody says. He's a pass-catching scat back that can't catch the ball. Led the team in drops last year. He just sucks. 64 attempts, yet he's still, Montgomery couldn't get in the groove. You'd see Montgomery come on the field. He'd run, pretty good runner, catch the ball for a bunch of yards, and then they'd pull him out, and they'd bring Tariq Cohen. So what is your thought process, kind of overview on David Montgomery and the Tariq Cohen situation from last year? Let's talk about that first.
Let me just start off by saying this. David Montgomery, from the time the Bears drafted him, was set up to fail. So to your point about Tariq Cohen, absolutely. Matt Nagy loves Tariq Cohen. He loves having pass-catching backs, and that's not to say David Montgomery can't catch the ball. He actually can. He still had 25 receptions, I believe, for 185 yards. So he has that ability, but they love Tariq Cohen, and so they love using him, and that takes away from David Montgomery. I haven't even gotten to the fact that he doesn't get the consistent attempts like he did in the second half of the year, but I think it's just Matt Nagy's fascination with Tariq Cohen.
I don't get it.
And the fact that he's a gadget guy, but to your point, I completely agree. I was on my channel complaining all year that they've used Tariq Cohen way too much.
Way too much. He's not that good, and he's an arrogant – I could be wrong, but is he one of those arrogant guys, chip on his shoulder? I guess he grew up being a really short dude, so he probably has this chip on his shoulder. Am I wrong to say that, or is he kind of cocky?
Tariq Cohen, everyone knows he's the fact that he's short, the Napoleon syndrome, if you will.
Syndrome,
you have that. But the thing with Tariq Cohen is, and I think I know the fascination behind him, is the Bears coaching staff has seen him obviously break off a couple of plays. We're used to the highlight reel that was Devin Hester, and so they always are looking for that one splash play, the touchdown, and it doesn't happen all that often, but they chase it instead of grinding it out with your power back and do it all back in David Montgomery. So I think they just try to hit gold way too many times and come up short.
Yeah, it's very, very disappointing. And this is one of the reasons I want to stay away from David Montgomery. I want to draft him. I think he's a big sleeper this year. I got to go back here. You mentioned he was set up to fail. Why is that? Was it because, again, the fascination and the love for Tariq Cohen? Is that what you mean?
Well, the reason I say he was set up to fail was when the Bears drafted him, they actually traded a pick to draft David Montgomery. So, again, Ryan Pace, the GM of the Bears, he's the type of general manager. When he likes a guy, he goes after him. Everybody knows he traded up for Mitchell Trubisky, but we won't get into that. Right. And so when he likes somebody, he goes after him. But then when you go after somebody, you got to set him up to succeed. The offensive line was awful last year. Run blocking was terrible all year. David Montgomery averaged 3 yards per carry. Okay,
3.7 I got here. Yeah.
yeah, 3.7 yards per carry. Josh Jacobs had the same attempts, I believe 242,
Around there.
and he had almost 1,100 yards. So in the same attempts, Josh Jacobs gets way more because he averaged what, 4.8 yards per carry.
Right.
Now I like Josh Jacobs. People will say Josh Jacobs is better. I obviously watched the Bears up close and a lot. David Montgomery makes holes when there are no holes. He literally, the fact that he was even able to average 3.7 is impressive as it is because of the fact of how bad the offensive line was. So back to the point of why they set him up to fail was the offensive line was not good. Matt Nagy was inconsistent with using him. He never got into a rhythm. And it was just kind of, okay, Mitch isn't playing well. Let's try to feed David Montgomery. Oh, you know what? I don't know about that. So the inconsistencies with his attempts, the inconsistencies with the offensive line, I think all of that contributed to it.
Yeah, it was a disaster to watch as a fantasy fan because, again, I had him in a lot of my leagues, and I thought he was going to be the guy. I mean, you see how his work ethic is good. He's focused. You saw the offseason training, the preseason, all that stuff. Yep. David Montgomery does look like the real deal, and he catches better than Tariq Cohen. So I don't get why he's not on the field. Tariq Cohen should be there as an accessory if David goes off for a big run, which we're yet to see. I was looking for that big breakout run that just never really happened for him, I mean, he's just come in. Tariq should just come in just as a change of pace or just, for David to catch his breath. But I really dislike Nagy. I just don't know what it is. He almost outcoaches himself. I don't understand what it is, man. What is the fascination with this? Like you kind of said, right? It's just, he just loves Tariq Cohen, and there's nothing we can do about it as fantasy owners.
Yeah, I think with Nagy, the thing is he's an offensive coach, okay? And offensive coaches, they like passing the football more than they do like rushing football. And we saw in Kansas City, it was under Andy Reid, the air attack. And so I don't think Matt Nagy is ever going to be the coach that rushes the football more so than he passes it unless he, absolutely needs to. So his first go-to is always going to be to depend on the passing game, which obviously hurts David Montgomery. But I do think with how bad last season was for the Bears coming off of a 12-4 year and then going 8-8, I think Nagy knows now he doesn't have the type of job security and leverage that he once did. And so now it's, okay, you better be real careful here because if things go south, something could happen. And so I think he's going to depend on the run game a little bit more. I'm not going to say completely, but a little bit more than he did last season.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine he's got to be on a short leash after that. I mean, it was just again, I'm not a Bears fan. I didn't go to all the games, but I try to watch a lot. But again, I think he was getting a lot of criticism for not using Montgomery. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
On the social?
Yeah. The biggest issue with Matt Nagy was this play calling, which is funny because that's what he was hired to do in Chicago, is be a brilliant play caller. But from the 2018 season when the Bears went 12-4 to last season, the big difference was the play calling. And it was something that he got absolutely grilled for. And he knows it. He knows it now. So going into this season, this is why I'm saying I don't think he will be as dramatic with his play calling. He might dial it back.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just, like I said, as a fantasy fan, I have never been so I was fuming inside because, again, Montgomery would have these amazing plays, and then there you'd see him running off. I'm like, dude, keep him on the field. And you see guys like Zeke and Saquon and CMC. Their teams believe in them, and the lack of faith in your running back, it absolutely destroys me when you've got a guy with the work ethic, the strength, and, he can break tackles. David Montgomery is an absolute beast. And again, I'm just so disappointed in that. So going into let's talk about 2020 projection here. You kind of touched on it. So a little bit more production out of Montgomery, but how much more do you see him crack? He'll definitely crack 1,000. I feel that, 6 touchdowns. I want to see more than 6 rushing touchdowns. Do you see Tariq Cohen around the goal line again, stealing some receiving touchdowns there?
I don't see Tariq Cohen stealing any goal line work. I think David Montgomery is going to be the goal line back. But going into 2020, a little optimism I can share, though, is the offensive line help. So the Bears did pick up an offensive lineman in free agency, Jermaine Afidi, from the Seattle Seahawks. Now, he's not, a fantastic, and it doesn't mean the O-line's fixed, but with the departure of Kyle Long, he retired. The Bears do need to address offensive line, and so in the draft, I absolutely expect them to address that. So that's going to help. And so right off the bat, that's going to help the situation more than it did last season. And look, David Montgomery averaged 3.7 yards per carry.
Right.
There's no way I think he does that again next year. So even putting him at 4.5 yards per carry, that easily gets him over 1,000. I'm going to, stay somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100. And as far as the rushing touchdowns, I think, 6 was even good last year for him, but I think definitely he's going to get more goal line work. So I'm guessing he's going to be more than 6 touchdowns.
We're going to have to, again, I'm bringing you guys on just to kind of focus on one topic. I do want to talk about Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. We'll save that to another episode. Yep. But again, back to David Montgomery. When you look at fantasy football impact, I'm looking at possibly drafting him. It depends on where his ADP is going to fall. We don't know. As of right now, we don't know. We're going to see what happens after the draft. They're going to address the O-line, like you said, in the draft, right? You're going to see that.
Yep.
Okay, yep. So they're going to address the O-line. That's going to be improved. That's only going to help. Are they going to get another wide receiver? Are they sold on their wide receiving core now, do you think?
Well, they don't. They have a number 1 receiver in Allen Robinson. I think they know they have a number 2 receiver in Anthony Miller. But yes, I do expect them to still draft a number 3 receiver because really, other than Allen Robinson, you don't have any guaranteed commodities. Anthony Miller I mentioned, but again, he was inconsistent and he didn't really do anything the first half of last season. Right. And then behind him, you've got guys like Riley Ridley, Jawan Wims. These guys are young, they're inconsistent, and they're unproven. So I do expect them to draft another receiver. They need a guy who can really be a burner for them.
Right.
They lost Taylor Gabriel. They need speed on that side. So I do expect them to draft a receiver in the NFL draft.
I'm excited to watch and see what happens. And then I don't think Mitch's job, he's on a short leash as well now. We saw him come off the field last year a little bit. I thought maybe that was the end of Mitch. But yeah, man, again, very, very hard to watch when you're looking at David Montgomery last year. Very high expectations in fantasy. I remember Nagy coming on saying, if you're a fantasy fan, I know how you feel, but he's not going to be a workhorse right off the bat. And then he just never ended up being the workhorse. It was such a lackluster, anticlimactic performance by David Montgomery. And it was very hard to watch, especially when you're in like 3rd and 2 down type situations or whatever. And he's running the ball with Tariq Cohen. I mean, it just blew my mind, dude. And then he'd get negative yards, obviously. And he did it so many times where Tariq would run it 3rd and 2 or whatever it was, 2nd and 2. I don't know what it was. Just short goal line situation where they need the first down, and he's running it with Tariq Cohen. Tariq would always get negative yards. I'm like, what are you doing? It was I can't even imagine. I'm not even a Bears fan, but as a fantasy fan owning David Montgomery, it was so hard to watch. It really was.
Not even just a goal line. It was even, anywhere on the field, you'd be on a 3rd and 2, you'd be in a 3rd and 3, and they do like these sweeps to the left, and you're going the long way. And I'm like, just run it up the middle with David Montgomery. What are you doing, Matt Nagy? And that's part of the criticism that I mentioned earlier is the simple calls were always there, and Matt Nagy got too cute. That was his big criticism last year is he got too cute with the play calling. Instead of doing, what works, the bread and butter plays, he got away from that. And it cost him, and obviously we saw that.
Yeah, it was an absolute disaster. So hopefully 2020 projection, be cautious with Montgomery. I'm going to watch the NFL draft, see what they do, see what moves they make. And if there is a season this year, which I think there will be, we're going to have to watch training camp and maybe if there is a preseason, a bit of preseason to see what happens here. But Tariq Cohen, what does look promising is that only 64 rushing attempts compared to 242. I don't think he should get any rushing attempts, if you ask me. I really don't think. I'll give him 1 or 2 just to be nice to the season. But 64, I hope that goes the other way because now we got a guy that runs the ball 300 times potentially, right? If you take that away from Tariq Cohen, then you're up to Zeke Elliott type attempts around 300. Now you're over 1,000 rushing yards. You get an improved O-line. Your yards per carry go up, and you get more goal line work. So now you're looking at a 1,200-yard rushing season, 10 to 12 touchdowns, 4.5 yards per carry, and you've got yourself a running back and an RB1 on your team if everything falls into place. There you go.
Yep, absolutely. And just to piggyback off that point, literally, if David Montgomery doesn't get any more attempts next season and he just stays at around the 240 that he does, and his yards per carry go up to 4.5, that's 1,100 rushing yards. If they go up to 5 yards per carry, that's 1,200 right there. So you don't even need more rushing attempts. You just need him to be able to have better yards per carry, and that's obviously going to be dependent on play calling and the offensive line, because I have no doubts about David Montgomery's talent. He can absolutely do it.
To fully analyze it again, do you think Nick Foles helps or doesn't help David Montgomery if he were to come in more than Mitch? Who do you think is better in regards to impacting David Montgomery as a quarterback, Foles or
I think Nick Foles would help a little bit more, only because I know that Nick Foles does not rush the football, and so there's no threat of taking away carries from David Montgomery. Mitchell Trubisky is more athletic than him, and so we've seen not just, the scrambles, but designed runs as well that the Bears have used Mitch Trubisky in. So with Nick Foles, it's more of a traditional offense under center, the I formation, and just hand it off to David Montgomery. So I do think Nick Foles does help David Montgomery's situation a little bit more. But to me, it's essentially negligible. I'm not going to have that be the deciding factor of who's going to be the quarterback. I'm still confident, but to your point, I do think Nick Foles helps a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard this, but Mitch Trubisky tested positive for losing his job to Nick Foles.
Oh,
that's my
no,
joke.
I didn't hear that. No,
that's my joke of the day.
Yeah.
All right. What were we gonna? We'd add something to that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, look, I don't want to get into the quarterback situation completely. We can do that in another episode. But all I will say is this: regardless of who the quarterback is, the starting quarterback is for the Bears, I do think there will be a new focus on the running game, not just because of the fact that they didn't use it last year, but second year for David Montgomery, you're going to address the offensive line, and I do think they will learn from their mistakes. So I just think that there's going to be a clear focus here, a little bit more on the run game than there was last year, regardless of the quarterback situation.
Right. Yeah, definitely a fantasy football sleeper, guys. David Montgomery. I think a lot of people will be sleeping on him due to last year. I'm not afraid to take risks. I like the talent. I just dislike Nagy. I mean, that's kind of the main thing. But again, him being on a short leash, this could mean good news for fantasy owners. Thank you. I appreciate you coming on. Can you tell everybody how to find you? Shout out your channel, because a lot of people are listening on audio as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys can obviously subscribe to my YouTube channel, Faiz Sports Talk. That's Faiz Sports Talk, no space there. And then reach out to me on my Twitter and my Instagram handle. I have both my personal and my YouTube handle. So for Instagram, it's Faiz Sports Talk, and then for my Twitter, it's my name, Faizan Qureshi. So I have it linked in every video. So all you have to do, very simple, just go to my channel, Faiz Sports Talk. In the description for any video, you guys can follow all my social media handles. So that's the best way to reach me on there.
Thanks, Faizan. I appreciate it. Very good insight on the Bears. We're going to have you on a little bit more talking about this, because, again, I may be considering getting back into the same kind of situation I got last year. And I rarely, fool me once type thing. I don't really fall back into that trap. But I really like David Montgomery. It'd be a shame if he does this 2 years in a row. And if he does, go back to this terrible performance because of Nagy, I'm going to let Nagy hear it on social media. So that's just how it's going to be.
I have no doubt about that. So
yeah,
let's see what happens.
Noise. All right. Thank you for being on, guys. Make sure you guys shoot him a follow, and make sure you guys follow the Impact series below. I got videos for every team, almost every player. I'm working through it right now, bringing in an analyst. And again, leave a thumbs up and let me know below. Do you trust Nagy, and are you drafting David Montgomery? Leave it in the comments. Thanks for being here, guys. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.